clean space. And this year, we have the motto, New Space for People. You all know that the main conclusions of the last Space Council in November 2020 give the relevance of the new space for a more innovative and resilient and competitive space activities in Europe. The main objectives of the conclusions were to frame a new space in the space economy in Europe, how to use the new European Space Programme and its contribution to reinforce the new space in Europe, and how the new space will contribute to reinforce the competitiveness of the resilience in Europe. Basically, the main objectives of the conclusions. Also, the importance to link the space sector to the non-space sector and to reinforce the usage of space data to develop the downstream applications. So we are talking about the conclusions of the Space Council. It is also important to include in the European portfolio the usage of the high resolution, time and space, Earth observation data, combining with artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, and to foster the development of the downstream applications. Also the secure connectivity and an approach for the space traffic management, and also a new approach how to use space technologies for European coastal areas and low cost to access to space. And this is why we are here all together, to discuss the importance of space for people and for socioeconomic benefits. And today we are living an exciting moment in how to use space. Space becomes a market, and new actors in space are emerging. New companies, new countries, but also space as a new operational environment for sovereignty, and also we are observing a new space racing, mainly between the big countries. We are facing an unprecedented acceleration of the international space programs, and small improvements in some technologies will have a tremendous impact in results, like, for example, the new ionic propulsion for satellites, just an example. This could be an example on how public research and development policies can give a big contribution to achieve leadership and for a more resilient Europe. We need to take the good example of Copernicus on how to affirm Europe as a global leader in Earth observation. Also the good example of the precision of the European navigation satellites, the Galileo, and we have here Rodrigo, which represents very well these initiatives. We need also the innovative solutions for the science and exploration programs in the European Space Agency for the upcoming years, like in-orbit servicings. Also, how to address user needs and link space to non-space sectors with the European agencies like EUSPA, EMSA, Frontex, and the Fisheries Agency. So, ladies and gentlemen, for these topics, we have here today several speakers to help us to understand the trends, the opportunities, the technologies, the threats. And these panelists and these topics will be spread in several panels, like Space for People in European Coastal Areas, which will be our first panel, Entrepreneurship, Earth Observation Satellite Initiatives, the Space in the European Union Recovery Plans, Access to Space, the Challenge of Space Traffic Management. And also, with our distinguished keynote speakers, we have Thomas Johnson from DEFIS. We have the Mr. Laércio from the IMP Brazil. We have our dear Minister of Science and Technology, Manuel Heitor. We have Nikolaus Anowski from the European Space Agency, and Steve Wolf from the Global Spaceport Alliance. So let's start with our nice panelists, and for that I would like to invite Elodie. I don't know if Elodie is online at this moment. So I invite Elodie to start her intervention. Elodie represented the Director General of ISA. So welcome, Elodie. Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. I hope you hear me well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Morning. It's really thanks for your introduction. It's really a great pleasure to be with you virtually today. It is an honor to represent the European Space Agency at this key event on new space for people. As a director of telecommunication and integrated application, I am heading a space program operating in a highly commercial and competitive market, providing social, economical impact within Europe. So space has entered the digital economy and society. This access and the usage of space, data that can be generated in space and also generated on Earth, are improving our daily life. Like, for example, there is many ways we now connect. Virtually today, for example, but we also connect through Internet of Things, through 5G. We are looking for soon having the automated driving, the new way of doing transport, having more sustainable mobility, having access to telemedicine, teleeducation that has been so key during this COVID crisis. And furthermore, this will open many possibilities in the application for the Industry 4.0. So at the European Space Agency, we are supporting and boosting our European industry, in particular the startups and the SME, as well as the key mature innovative players. And we are looking at new concepts with them, innovation, from the technology, the product, up to the application and services. So we are using, with them, we are providing support on the technical, but also on the business and funding side. We are looking at bringing, as you mentioned, all the application of space together to achieve much more. The Earth observation with Copernicus, the navigation with the Galileo data, and also the telecommunication as a catalyst, bringing the connectivity and the processing of all those data to go faster from point A to point B. We have seen the past 15 years have been able to incubate more than 1,500 startups through our business incubation network that is located in 60 different locations across our 22 member states of the European Space Agency. And we are facilitating the scale-up through access to our programs, as well as through access to financing, for example, through the European Space Agency Investor Forum. And we are welcoming now very strongly and very supportively the new initiative of our Commissioner Breton to have the Cassini program. We plan to work in close cooperation and partnership to further boost timely our European entrepreneur networks through various activities, including matchmaking, hackathon, prizes, pitching, and not only. So as you are entrepreneurs, as you are newcomers in the space environment, we need you because, as you mentioned, it's about space actors, but also non-space actors that together are generating the application of tomorrow. Space has entered this digital economy and society, allowing a large variety of innovative applications to be created, fulfilling really the 3P: people, planet, profit. It goes all together. Data is our electricity, and the connectivity will be our distribution network that we need to make it safe, reliable, and secure. We have welcoming as well the European Commission ambition about having a secure connectivity network and ambitious plan, allowing having space integrated into terrestrial network. We are again going to work in partnership with all the institutional players and the private sectors, and we will support again having the new entrants and the startup as well as SME mindset to be able to create even more innovation. This initiative is key for Europe to maintain its competitiveness vis-à-vis of the US and China and to develop application in a sustainable way that will facilitate the daily life of all the citizens from Europe. So we can mention other examples that are out of this initiative will be key, like being in a rescue situation or being for maritime smart shipping, allowing to detect the pollution or reducing the food waste by tracking the good when moving to a place to another, optimizing routes for airplane and future mobility transport that will reduce the CO2 impact and going toward a net zero energy target. So sustainable mobility, as we understand, but telemedicine also. Telemedicine about how to really have the space enable future next generation of hospital where even if you are in a remote condition, you can have access to the best treatment. Sensor for agricultural and environmental monitoring. So having also sensors that allow you to do a smart farming and supporting the agriculture development in a sustainable condition again. So all this space data and using, as you said, the excellent model of Copernicus and Galileo data will allow us to, with the telecommunication satellite being the glue of it, being doing air quality control, traffic management, green waste recycling, just to cite a few examples. And there is a huge European entrepreneurial mindset full of ideas and innovation that we want to facilitate in cooperation with all the partners. All that being said, I'm very pleased again to have been the opportunity to talk to you today, and I wish you a great event.
Thank you, Elodie. So now I give the floor to Rodrigo. Rodrigo is Executive Director of the new European Agency for Space, the EUSPA. So Rodrigo, the floor is yours, please.
Muito obrigado, bom dia. Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you as well, Elodie. Thank you for the invitation for this very interesting summit to speak in such an important event. It's really a pleasure for me as newly or almost newly elected Executive Director of the European Union Agency for the Space Program. Let me start by saying that this event comes exactly at the right time when we are thinking about the development of new space, especially when the conclusions of the EU Council under Portuguese presidency on new space for people underlines the importance of new space for an innovative, resilient, and competitive European Union space sector. As you may know, less than 1 month ago, the EU Space Programme regulation was published. With the publication of this new regulation, not only all the previously existing programs in space of the European Union came under one roof, but also our agency, the European Union Agency for the Space Programme, also known as EUSPA, was created. And we were created as one of the main implementing actors with a strong mandate to support innovation, entrepreneurship, and business development for Galileo and EGNOS, of course, and these we had already been involved as the European GNSS agency, the GSA, but also now for Copernicus and for GovSatcom. Therefore, EUSPA is a key actor of the new space approach of the European Union. Indeed, we are at the heart of new space. Our mission is not only to provide secure and performant space-based services, but also to materialize the opportunities that come from the development of innovative space products based on positioning, satellite navigation with Galileo and EGNOS, imagery from Copernicus, and telecommunications. And we did to maximize the synergies among the EU Space Programme components at user level. And in order to do that, we will work on three main areas. First, to foster the collaboration between space and non-space actors, allowing a greater cross-fertilization. For example, space and non-space companies are already teaming up on several of our Horizon-financed projects to bring innovative solutions to diverse markets, such as agriculture, transport, or resource management, just to cite a few. Second, to create opportunities for European Union companies to explore new markets through dedicated procurements, grants, and prizes that will bring the necessary support to facilitate the creation of new business opportunities. But also, and very important, by connecting them with private investors and venture capitalists that can bring the necessary financing capability to jumpstart their business case. On this particular point, we are working very closely with the European Commission on Cassini. For example, one of our winners of the My Galileo Solution competition, an Estonian company called 10 Lines, is developing an automated robot to design and drop parking places in supermarkets. They already have several contracts in Europe and recently acquired a major contract in the United States. Third, by encouraging all the member states to benefit of the added value of the innovation brought by space technologies. Here, it is particularly important the capacity building in the member states, including those with emerging capabilities. In our most recent prizes, we attracted 600 innovators and entrepreneurs from all across the European Union to develop GNSS-based solutions for very diverse uses, such as crisis and emergency response, smart transport for a Green Deal, solutions for digital age, and cybersecurity. But also, in the operations of Galileo and EGNOS, we involve large and small and medium actors from several member states, and with them, we can ensure the 24/7 operations of Galileo and EGNOS. And lastly, in GovSatcom, we are now looking for innovative approaches to build the Satcom hub. And while we do all this, we focus on the priorities of the European Union, notably those to which space can bring a key contribution: the Green Deal, the digital transition, and the resilience of the European Union. In all these areas, space technologies are already playing a fundamental role, and we firmly believe that their full realization will be enabled by applications that benefit from space. Lastly, let me mention that the recently approved Council conclusions under Portuguese presidency call upon EUSPA with the Commission to foster the uptake of space services by stimulating the adoption of space-based solutions and by increasing the competitiveness of the European industry. We are ready to play our fundamental role on this. In conclusion, and taking on board this new space development is essential for our economies and also for our European integration. So as EUSPA, we take our central role in this development very seriously, and we are part of this revolution because it is important for the EU citizens and it is important for our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Really nice to have you here. It is really an honor. Now we move to our first panel. I don't know if Carla is already connected, Carla Santos from Repair. So I will invite our panelists. I think you are the only one physically present here, Hugo. This panel is a new space for people and space for people in European coastal areas. The speakers will be Hugo Costa from Portuguese Space Agency, Mr. Pampantonio from DEFIS, I'm sorry to pronounce, and also Olivier Lemaitre, Aerospace, Carol Filotico, Space Tech Partners, and Andrea Taramelli from ESPRA. So our moderator is Carla Santos, and Hugo, please, I will give the floor. Carla, you are there? Yes.
Hello everyone, bom dia a todos.
Okay.
Bom dia a todos, good morning to everyone, to the speakers, to guests, to panelists, and welcome to this first session on New Space for People and Space in European Coastal Areas. My name is Carla Santos, as Ricardo just mentioned. I am currently serving at the Portuguese Permanent Representation to the EU, and I had the pleasure to be chairing during these 6 months the Council Space Working Party, where actually the conclusions on New Space for People and Space for European Coastal Areas were negotiated. I'm moderating from Brussels, so I hope this will be run smoothly. This session is indeed about the two main priorities of the Portuguese presidency, and actually Ricardo and Rodrigo already mentioned them. Council conclusions, to those who don't know, they are usually documents adopted by ministers in council, which contain orientations regarding specific important political issues. And indeed, we had these two important texts adopted on the 28th of May by the space ministers in the council, the Competitiveness Council, how we call it. And the first on New Space for People, indeed, we try to encompass the main elements of a European approach to new space, having new space contributing to an innovative, competitive and resilient space sector at the service of people at large, and also on a very particular and important topic, coastal areas, showing the importance of Earth observation in addressing the challenges that coastal areas face nowadays, especially due to climate change. Ricardo already referred to our distinguished guests today. We'll be having Hugo André Costa, from the Board of Directors of Space Agency. We have Evi Pampantonio. I don't know if she's already connected, from DGDF European Commission. We have Olivier Lemaitre, and I already see him, from ASD Aerospace. And we have Professor Andrea Taramelli from ISPRA. I also see him already connected. Welcome to all of you. I will give the floor first to Hugo Costa. Hugo, as I said, is member of the board of the Portuguese Space Agency. He has served both in the public and the private sector in the areas of space, as well at EUMETSAT, and is now serving at the Portugal Space. So, Hugo, please.
Good morning, Carla, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. To be honest, I feel quite lonely here in this stage, but I know I can count with our colleagues from the panel online. As you know, the Portuguese presidency is about to end. We are just now in the last month of our presidency, and last week, as was already mentioned, it was approved, the two council conclusions by the European ministers. There's an important thing I would like to highlight, is that this is a teamwork and the presidency, not just between the capital, Lisbon, and the Perm Rep in Brussels, but also teamwork with the European Commission, the member states. And within this teamwork in the Portuguese team, Carla is the one leading us in Brussels, and for that, Carla, thank you very much for all the excellent work that you have done, and you managed also with your team in Brussels to have the council conclusions adopted. So thank you very much. But this teamwork is not just between the Portuguese presidency, but also it comes in a trio. So in our trio of 18 months, we had Germany, who just ended their presidency in December, and now Slovenia will take very soon after our presidency. And this comes together with 3 member states to join forces and to make sure that space continues to advance in Europe. And coming to the council conclusions that were approved last week on the new space for people, I would like to focus on the fact that it's the evolution and transformation of the space sector in Europe and the recognition that Europe needs a new approach to new space. We need to have a context on the dynamics of the space sector. The European New Space approach recognizes a rapid and persistent transformation in Europe of the space industry, and the need developments on the upstream and also on the downstream with the new players and new businesses. We need to ensure a coherent approach on the downstream segment, where we'll need to engage non-space markets and non-space industries to make use of the space data and to foster new opportunities and new markets. The European programs and initiatives and their contribution to the streamlining of new space. We have programs like Copernicus, Galileo, EGNOS, that they contribute with different data, different services that can support our industries in the different market segments. But we also should not forget that at European level, we'll have now GovSatcom and the European SST that will provide with more data to the industry, and therefore will have new services. We need to go towards an innovative union and the space sector to realize the opportunities of new space. We need to make sure that the European Union continues to be innovative, resilient, independent in the space sector. Especially, we need to ensure our autonomy in access to space, not just in terms of vehicles, but also in terms of spaceports and launch facilities. We need to ensure the resilience of our industry and the continuation to expand our data policy, which can be instrumental to drive the demand, but nevertheless needs to be improved in the context of the digital transformation and the demands of the new services. And of course, we need to ensure the use of high-resolution data. But we can only do this with finance, and we need to ensure that industry can have access to finance to keep growing their business. New space can only be achieved if there is access to finance, and we need to ensure diversified sources of funding at European, national, and regional level, and to support de-risking activities. Programs like Cassini, that we will later hear today, they will be fundamental to support the entrepreneurship of our space industry, but also the need to have public procurement, and we need to engage the public sector to support innovative solutions by using public procurement and to facilitate the commercialization and access to market. So this is a key point, to have the public sector more also engaged, that to be the prime customer to support then the industries to move forward. And then, of course, we have the other council conclusions that were adopted, the space for people in coastal areas. And why is this important to address the coastal areas right now? We are living in a moment where climate change will impact the coastal areas where we live, lots of us in Europe. When you look into the Blue Economy report in 2020, it was recognized the value of the ocean and the economic and social environment that for our European blue economy, and we understand how important the ocean is for the future of our economics here in Europe. So therefore, the presidency just last week was held in the All Atlantic Research and Innovation for a Sustainable Ocean Conference in Azores, and showed the importance of the space systems for the monitoring and oceans, and showed how coastal areas are especially vulnerable. The Council also adopted in 2019 Council conclusions that was the space solutions for a sustainable Arctic. And why is Arctic important? When you have the de-icing of the Arctic, this will have an impact also in our coastal areas. So we need to monitor and we need to understand what's happening in the Arctic. And Earth observation plays a key role in monitoring the changes of our coastlines, and therefore we need to ensure that our coastlines will be addressed by Copernicus, and we will better understand the interactions between space, climate, oceans, and the land services. But Copernicus, there are still gaps in Copernicus, and we need to measure key variables in the coastal ecosystem, and we need to encourage the use of satellite data to complement the national and regional in situ data that already exists. And again, here we need also to ensure that we have access to high-resolution data on Earth observation. And so we sincerely hope that by supporting Europe to move forward in this complex market, which is the space market, and with these Council conclusions also to support the life of our fellow citizens. So I'd like to be very brief and thank you very much to all. And I would like to pass the floor now to Carla, and thank you very much, Carla.
Thank you very much, Ugo, for giving the main elements of the two texts of Council conclusions that were adopted. It is my turn to give the floor to Evie. I see that she is already with us online. Evie Pampantonio is since January 2020, the head of unit of space policy in the European Commission, DG Defense Industry and Space. Evie was responsible for the adoption of the EU space regulation, the new regulation from 2021 to 2027. And she also was responsible for the negotiations regarding the agreement between the Commission and ESA and USPA for the implementation of the program. Heavy has been working in the area of space for a long time. She was also head of unit in the former DG GROW. Let me also thank very much Evie for her support during the 6 months of the Portuguese presidency, which was precious. So it is my pleasure to give you the floor, Evie, please.
Thank you, Carla, and good morning to everybody. I would really like to thank also the Portuguese presidency, and in particular you and the team that we have really worked along these 6 months together. And in particular, what you did in your council conclusion about new space for people. This is something that we really welcome, because this gives a kind of vision for the years to come. And we can really work together on this, because it coincides also with our objectives. So I would like to say that in Europe, as Commissioner Breton also has said, we have everything it takes to be a global space power. We can discuss if we're the second or the third or the fourth position of this, but we need to have our ambition and continue to be able to be an actor on the global scene. Why? Because we have the talents, we have the industrial capacity, we have a technological leadership thanks to our research efforts from the public and the private side, and also we have experience of ambitious space missions and programs. However, we cannot lose time, because the space ecosystem is under massive transformation, and the global race is on. So I think we have to deliver. This is the mandate that we got from Commissioner Breton to deliver on this. And of course, the space data, the space technologies in Europe are in the heart of the twin revolutions, transformations, the green and the digital. And of course, they contribute to greater resilience of our economies, as the previous speakers also indicated. So now that we have the ever largest budget in the Union for the EU space program, the 13.2 billion to implement, and now we have set all the modalities how we're going to spend, we really have to accelerate the transformation process of the EU space ecosystem. We have really to reimagine the way we do space business in Europe. We will try to modernize our programs. First, Galileo, with accelerating the second generation of Galileo, but also we have to think how Copernicus, which is, and I will come to this later, how Copernicus actually is the Earth observation has to evolve in this globally increasingly competitive sector of Earth observation. But also we have to address the future challenges and also to reduce our strategic dependencies, our dependencies in strategic sector. For example, we will propose a new flagship initiative, the Space-Based Secure Connectivity Initiative, that will also have a new approach in this area, because this can be also a game changer in how also we do space, and we would like to present it as an initiative that can contribute to the new space for Europe. Let me say what it means, this new space, because this has been a kind of buzzword and has been heavily debated, saying that we not have a definition. What is clear from the European Commission point of view is that we should be pragmatic, and we should, as I said, we should transform the way we do business. Of course, there is the US model, we cannot copy and paste the US model because we don't have the billionaires that the US have, and we don't have also the massive institutional demand that exists and the massive budget that the US market and the public has. So if we compare only the numbers, we can see that actually we're, as Europeans, we're lagging behind. If we add up all the investments at the European, national, and the European Space Agency level, we're really lagging behind. However, as I said, we have the talents, we have the industrial leadership, so and we have some tools, and we can be inspired by some positive examples there. So it is really time to act. And when we say that we have to change the way we do business, is really we have to be more risk taking. We have this risk culture that the public domain in Europe has been reluctant so far to take. We do not have this risk and fail attitude. And now under this commission, we really want to put forward the tools that we have under Horizon Europe also, through launching the famous Cassini initiative, this on the space entrepreneurship initiative. So we really want to foster first more innovation and more risky innovation through innovation partnership or innovative procurements, PCP instruments that so far we have not used it so much. Also, we want to enlarge our IOV and IOD program, so in-orbit validation, in-orbit demonstration, so to have it a more regular program and to be able also to foster more startups that are able, or micro launches, to be able to showcase their technology to test. And also, as the previous speaker also was saying, we really want to have more innovative funding. It is not just SMEs in the space ecosystem, they need to have more access to finance. We've been saying from the Commission side for quite some years now. However, we see that there is a need for increasing either the debt financing instruments or also the venture capital, the equity instruments. So this is something that under the Cassini umbrella that we really want to work together with the European Investment Bank, the European Investment Fund, and InvestEU, so that we can boost more this risk culture so that the public can take part of the risk, because we know that space investments are perceived as high risk and with long-term cycles, so that it is not obvious for purely commercial banks to take this type of risk, at least for the smaller players. So I think as a public sector, this is something that we can fill this gap to address this market failure there, so that the rest of the normal kind of risk is taken by the commercial sector. And this is part of our new approach in space. And I think the secure connectivity constellation this is something that's under preparation. We have launched the reflection together with member states and industry players. And we have launched a first study. We have launched now a second study to see how this architecture should look like in the future before table as a commission the proposal later this year. So that this is also part of our new approach, that we really have to reconcile all actors, the bigger, the smaller, the more innovative, so that we can modernize the way we do business in Europe. And also, as I said, also the way also we do public procurements in Europe. So we are able to, we really, this is our will to really foster more innovation in our procurements. We have not done it so far very much. And then last but not least, I mentioned the strategic autonomy, that it is important for this commission. The Alliance for Launches is something that we are working and preparing now together with the European Space Agency. And we hope that we will federate all the actors, the public and the private, around the table to have this reflection on how the European launcher family should look like in the 10, 20, 30 years to come, so that they can remain competitive in the global scene. Competition is fierce, and we know our US competitors, they have also not only a very good business model, but they also benefit from firm commitments by the public. And this is something that we are working, as it was mentioned, I think, by the previous speaker, that the union also can act as an anchor customer with the aggregation of demand of the launching needs of the EU space program. This is a first step in this direction, but this is not the only one. So I think as part of our new approach, we're willing to act as more as an anchor customer also for the more innovative technologies. It's part of the shift of our culture in Europe on how we do business in space. And I think last but not least, let me also highlight that the space for people in the coastal areas. This was also highlighted in the Council conclusion adopted by the Council. We have an excellent tool in Europe, Copernicus, and we are actually a key player in the field of Earth observation. We produce reliable data that can be used by the scientific communities and also to preserve our natural environment and in the coastal areas in particular. As I said, we have to rethink the Copernicus model to adapt it to the global competition in order to be able to remain as a leader in Earth observation. So this is something we work closely with the European Space Agency, but also with our member states, so that we can address these challenges. And with this, I would like to thank you and give the floor to Carla. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Effie, for giving an overview of the vision of the Commission, which coincides obviously with the vision of the Council regarding new space and the need for having indeed this new vision for the future years, since we cannot copy paste what is done in the US. And you mentioned many important issues like addressing the future challenges and reduce the dependencies of involving all actors in changing the way we do business and fostering innovation, including in procurement. And we are obviously very much looking forward for the new initiatives of the Commission, together with all actors on the secure connectivity and Alliance for Launches. Very much appreciated. And now I turn to the next speaker, Olivier Lemaitre. Olivier is Secretary General of ASD Eurospace, the Association of the European Space Industries. Olivier has been at the forefront of the current space policy discussion, sharing the views of the European space industry. He was part of the Belgian delegation to the European Space Agency Council. He was also advising the permanent representation of Belgium in the EU, where we including had the opportunity to meet. And he has also been in charge of the UFS Battalions Alane in Space. So it is my pleasure to give the floor to Olivier, please.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you for inviting me today, and thank you to see you again, even virtually. We know each other since so long now, not getting younger. So let me perhaps, before entering into the subject of new space, just make a very quick reminder about space in Europe. On two particular subjects. First is about the institutional demand, which in Europe is extremely weak, and I've been very pleased to hear Evie mentioning that this institutional demand is indeed very weak, because usually it's a reality that is quite systematically ignored. And we are talking about the European space policy in general. This is the one factor that nobody seems to be willing to talk about. And of course, we all know that the difference exists because in the US, space is an element of their defense and foreign affairs policy, which does not exist yet in Europe, but I don't think it's the only answer to discussion, and this is clearly the hot topic in the European space policy. Second reminder I would say about space in Europe is the fact that the European space sector has been able somehow to compensate the very weak institutional demand because it has become commercial, and it is even proportionally the most commercial space sector in the world. We are making 40% of our turnover on the open markets that are, by the way, extremely small. And the European space industry is contributing significantly to the positive trade balance of Europe in excess of 1 billion euro a year, which is quite a lot of money. And again, this reality seems to be very often ignored, as we keep hearing quite regularly that, and I quote, EU space companies rely too much on public procurements, while actually we are the one sector in the world that is relying as little as possible on public procurement. So now coming to new space, as Evie was mentioning too, there is no consensually accepted definition of new space. Still, if we look at what is happening in the US for inspiration, I suppose that everybody would agree that the new space approach is reflected by a new distribution of cost and risk between public authorities and industry, a transfer of control of the main technical characteristic of the program from the public to the private, and also a transition from acquisition of infrastructure to a scheme consisting in long-term commitment to the purchase of services. And this kind of scheme allow the private operators to actually leverage their investment by selling additional services on secondary markets, but at a marginal cost. And this is what is happening, for instance, with SpaceX or with Planet in the US. And I hope you have noticed that I was talking about an approach when I was talking about new space. Now I must realize that in Europe, there is this tendency to define new space not as an approach, but a kind of an industrial sector or subsector. And a sector that would roughly be characterized by new private initiative, supposedly quite independent from the large traditional public market offered by the space agencies, initiative that would be financially backed by the venture capital sector and investment bank, and initiative associated with a promise of a disruption, either in terms of technologies, systems, mode of production, and the emergence of new service markets. And I believe actually that in Europe, this tendency to conceptualize the new space as a sector or a subsector rather than as an approach is a mistake, and a mistake with potentially quite detrimental effects on the European space policy that is still in the making. That being said, there are actually two realities that we cannot object. The first one is the emergence in Europe of new private companies that are looking at building viable business cases around constellation in LEO, for broadband, for IoT, for Earth observation, business cases around microsatellite, micro-launcher manufacturing, about exploitation of space resource, and so on. So we shall also recognize that the thriving European startup environment has grown to significant size, with maybe something like 1,500 employees in 2020 and more than 1 billion of euro raised in equity in recent years. Although this sector or this subsector has yet to reach economic viability with, as we know, very risky business cases. The other reality that we cannot object is the attractiveness of this new space movement for policymakers, based on the expectation that I described, on the hope that sometimes it will enable the emergence of a space industry in non-traditional space countries, but also, let us face it, on quite a growing mistrust of the traditional space industry. And let me illustrate. I've been invited very recently at a workshop organized by DG Défi, and a civil servant asked me the following question. And he was asking me, you know that in the Commission we want to support startup and SMEs, but with a constrained budget, if we support startup and SMEs, then we will also have to remove funding that is going today to traditional space companies. So what shall we do? And indeed, what should we do? And I guess that this question is precisely the key misunderstanding that we are facing today, and that is somehow blocking our evolution in space policy. Because whether public institutions want to support the development of competitive products to support industry competitiveness, or whether public institutions want to buy competitive products for their own use. In the end, it's all about the product and not who produced it. Provided, of course, and this is particularly important in the case of smaller entities, provided that the public customers can make full use of the competencies existing throughout Europe. So the question is therefore, in my view, not how to preferentially procure from startups or SMEs or support their development, but rather, how do we remove the barriers that are actually preventing those private companies from Today, the Commission and ESA apparently seem to believe that, sorry, my connection was out. Is it okay?
Yes, it is okay.
Sorry,
It stopped for a few seconds, but it's working now.
Yeah. So today, the Commission and ESA apparently seem to believe that the main obstacle is access to finance, and it might indeed be an issue, but I think this should be further investigated. And more specifically, it would be necessary to check to what extent is access to growth finance hard to find due to a failing venture capital environment or due to dodgy business cases and insufficient technology maturity and product readiness of European startups. So perhaps if we want to improve private investment, we should significantly increase initiative to de-risk product, but also markets. I will come back to this later. And more generally, we should also check whether we aren't simply trying to mimic in Europe for space a recipe that has worked in the US, mostly for the ICT sector. In any case, there are insuperable obstacles for those smaller entities. And already 13 years ago, the European Commission identified a list of obstacles in a very interesting communication entitled European Code of Best Practice Facilitating Access by SMEs to Public Procurement Contract that I recommend that you read. And amongst those obstacles, we find lack of knowledge about tender procedures, excessive administrative burden, too large size of contract, too little time to prepare the tenders, cost of preparing the tenders, excessive requirement for financial guarantees, late payment by contracting authorities, and many, many more. So here again, I think that investigating among the 200 or so European startups about their reality would help to prioritize the barriers to remove and to have a direct positive impact on the sector with, in my view, little additional investment. And I do believe that actually ensuring a fair access to procurement and grant for smaller entities such as startups is probably, I would say, a more constructive approach than to artificially polarize an already very small sector between the new and the old, which doesn't help. So finally, I would actually really insist on the fact that the EU can play a very special role, in particular stimulating the market and stimulate then the commercial market, because it has both the capacity to achieve the necessary critical mass to ensure profitability of a service and the political weight and the means to promote its use. For instance, for coastal areas, that it was key to the heart of the Portuguese presidency, through regulation, through standards and norms, and also through procurement, including with tools such as pre-commercial procurement or innovation partnership. And I think it is through a significant increase, very significant increase of the institutional demand that I believe Europe will not only continue to be a space power, but will also stimulate innovation and allow the emergence of profitable private markets. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Olivier, for the very interesting intervention. It's always important to have also the views of the European space industry, and very much interesting what you call the approach to new space, which was exactly what we tried to do, not going towards a definition because we would never get there, but indeed to have an approach with the different elements. And you mentioned a few of them, like the public customers making use of all the competences of the European industry of stimulating the markets, de-risking products and the markets, and indeed with a particular vision of having all on board. Thank you very much. And I would now move to Carla Filotico from Space Tech Partners. Hello, Carla. Carla, let me just present her very briefly. She is an experienced consulting professional with 20 years of management consulting in numerous strategy and transformation projects in the aerospace and defense industry. She's partner at Space Tech Partners and is currently responsible for running a study on behalf of the European Commission on EU space economics in the global context with a focus on new space. And I can say that the study, the preliminary results are very instrumental in the reflection that helped the Portuguese presidency in going forward with the new space policy priority. And so with no further ado, Carla, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I sent a short presentation. I hope that is going to be shown on screen eventually. Let me know if otherwise I should share my screen. No?
I asked the organization just to put up the slides. Indeed, they have them. If not, you can try to share your screen.
Okay, give me a second. Okay, is it coming from the organizer? So otherwise I can share. Okay, I'll try to share. I think I can share my screen. Very good.
Indeed, you can share your screen.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the floor, and sorry for the 2 seconds of connection here. So indeed, we are running this study, which is going to be completed by September for DG DEFIS. So preliminary results have been already shared with the Portuguese and DEFIS colleagues already. And here we would like to give some, inspiration for the sake of the discussion of this conference. And a lot of concepts have been already mentioned by my colleagues a few minutes ago. I mean, there is no doubt that depending from the exact figure, the space sector is seen as a growing sector, which is growing eventually with the pace higher than the global GDP and driven, sustained by governments and driven by commercial more and more in the future. Now we have this discussion. While Europe is definitely confirmed as a leading space sector, we know that other spacefaring countries are very active and potentially the Chinese space capabilities, in fact, have grown dramatically, questioning who's really second to the US. We always speak about the space race, and we just wanted to bring this up in order to say that indeed we don't have to look only at the space budgets, but actual activities and capabilities of these countries in space and how they are developing. It's important to have a look at the global context in order to understand about the race and the competitiveness that our industry is actually facing locally and globally. So definition about new space, we totally agree with Olivier. For us, new space is an approach. It's not about segmenting old versus new companies. It's an approach, it's a global trend, and which is including a series of technological and business model innovations, leading in fact in a reduction in cost, shorter life cycles, and a bolder approach to risk taking in the space sector, being private or public. This is very important because indeed we have seen that also old or traditional space companies have taken a lot of these new trends on board in their current operations. So a change in the business philosophy, so ranging from taking stock of what's happening in other sectors, from IT and automotive in order to produce space capabilities, higher risk appetite and risk taking, for example, technological shift. In this, there is an acceleration on anything related to digital, and there is a convergence between different sectors, which is from coming, for example, IT and telecom, which is affecting the space industry with new mission design adopted, which eventually are taking a higher use of commercial off the shelf systems and equipment compared to the traditional way of doing space and system and missions. Framework conditions are very important. Government as a customer has been mentioned as one of the key drivers to grow the new companies and new actors to actually become more and more scalable in this framework. For example, SpaceX, as mentioned by Oliver before, increasing number of public public actors from emerging countries wishing to invest, because indeed space is becoming more affordable, and so even minor countries around the globe are interested to launch their own satellites, and therefore from that perspective increasing the total pie of potential budgets, global budgets from a public government perspective, but indeed new actors also stimulated by increasing private funding, which is of course driven by the fact that space is not only necessarily driven by longer time and return on investment, because thanks to this a new approach you can eventually have a better business case in a shorter time frame. Some highlights from our interviews that we did across the sector, focusing on both traditional and emerging companies, but focusing on what this new space trend actually means in practice. Definitely verticalization is one element of the business philosophy shift. While most satellite operators are expanding vertically, integrating all stages from satellite production to provision of services to end customers. The emergence of micro launches is coming because indeed, thanks to many new constellations coming, there is more and more the need to place the satellites in orbit at the right time, and to support the business case of the different players. A delay in a launch can impact dramatically the business plan of new players. And then to manage one important and other aspects, for example, in terms of framework conditions, I never stop saying that it's good to have funding by every customer. It's definitely better when we look from these new commercial and from commercial players. We have mentioned already that indeed the space industry is growing, expanding both in Europe and globally, with new emerging actors actually coming up across the entire value chain. Of course, we have a strong industry already in place, but there are several startups or in a scale up or in different stages which are becoming a very interesting with very interesting propositions both in Europe and elsewhere. Just an element to note, in the ground segment, the majority of these new players are actually UK based, and we have an Italian and a German ones. So definitely an area of potential future gap. So to conclude, and for the short time that we have about this, and the full results of the study will be published potentially in an executive summary around September, October. Our few recommendations for a healthier, more modern, and more agile space sector in Europe. We all recognize indeed the space sector is an interesting and growing and blossoming sector. It's a matter of fact that more and more players are interested in space, coming also from non-space. We've seen automotive companies now willing to do something in space, like 3D printing or even having constellations, like for example, Geely, the Chinese car manufacturer, wants its own constellation for leveraging PNT and for their autonomous driving, for example. So European space industry, however, is challenged, of course, by this increasing global competition. We have three major recommendations, and you can take it on board or not, which are actually already working on, and we've heard about from Evi, from DEFIS, how active they're trying to be and more modernizing the way the approach we take for space in Europe, but definitely create a sustainable captive institutional market, as we mentioned several times in these conversations already, and we totally agree on that. Keeping increasing level of public investment in space in a way to guarantee the foundations for any space policy, which is ultimately maximizing the benefits for the society. And this is related to different strategic objectives, like safeguarding the capability, strengthening the resilience, the competitiveness, the reliability, etc., and enhancing the technology non-dependence, as we mentioned several times, indeed, and ultimately also support the big policies like climate change, sustainability, and digital divide. This is definitely where, as probably was mentioned before, the public has to feel market failure. These topics have to be addressed by the public in a way, and of course, making stock of the capabilities offered by the private sector. And ultimately, innovate on the procurement approaches, as we mentioned already, to allow the private sector to redefine the role in risk-taking in the financing of the space programs. And I think we are all aligned on this last point as well. So indeed, I think we are on the right path, potentially in Europe, to keep our sector flourishing, but never, let's say, lower your guards. And this would be my advice and the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carla, for your presentation. Indeed, I agree that we are all very much aligned, including that we are addressing an approach to new space with this new trend and not exactly a definition, the different changes in the approaches of the business philosophy, the technology management, the funding, the framework conditions. And thank you very much for the recommendations, which I think are also very much in line with what has been discussed so far. And now, and since coastal areas are also very much important, I would turn now to Andrea Taramelli. Professor Andrea Taramelli is faculty professor at the Scuola Superiore di Studi in Pavia, IUSS. He's reader in remote sensing and surface coastal process science at the Institute for Environmental Protection and Research in Rome, ISPRA. And he is in charge of the Italian Copernicus User Forum. And I know, Andrea, that you also have some slides. So the floor is yours. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Hugo, for inviting me. And I'm really happy to be part of this discussion panel. Before sharing the few slides, I would like to start from what was already presented from the other speakers, and how is important to, in the new space development, really looking to what is, the need of the final end user, who is going to use all this giant amount of data and information, because the really key part is the fact that we need to use all this data, so all this development that the new space program is going to put on the table in the next 7 years, but also all the information that comes from the space sector. Sometimes we joke in Italy because we have to bring the space investment down to the earth. This is really the key part, and this is, the really value added of the space program. So in this line, there was quite a big effort from member state, in particular of the Med7 member state, and I will share my screen so you will see the presentation. I cannot show. Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
No. It doesn't allow me. I don't know if I have one moment. Yeah. One moment. Yeah. Oops. They done. One moment. I have to recognize. Can you share? Because I have some problem. Not sure why. Otherwise, Zoom is asking me to leave the meeting and connect again for sharing. Not sure if you can share.
I asked the organization to check if they can share the slides.
Otherwise, it will take less than 1 minute to reconnect.
Okay, they say they didn't have access to
I
your
will
PPT,
leave
then
the room
reconnect.
and connect again.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
No worries. And in the meantime, and since whilst we wait for Andrea to connect, just to tell you that we have 2 questions in the chat that you can start the panelists reflecting upon them. We have a question by Bryce Lanson. He says, why the public demand should be lower in Europe compared to the US? Can you explain? I know that Olivier already hinted to that, but just for you to reflect a bit on the question. And then Bryce also asks to Space Tech, please do not forget equipments manufacturers in space in your description regarding incumbents. So just for you to reflect at the end of the presentations, we will open the floor to reply. And we have already Andrea with us that will try to share the slides.
Thanks a lot. Sorry for that.
No, perfect. We already are seeing them.
So, as I was telling in my initial speech, is the fact that the Med7 member state has built a white paper on, focusing on Copernicus for the blue economy and the Mediterranean Sea and beyond. Of course, starting from that, we ended up on an interest not only from the Med7 countries, but from all the European countries. So the Med7 is an informal group of EU member states that is established to coordinate action at EU level on issues of common interest. In this case, the main interest was focusing on what Copernicus can do for the blue economy in the Mediterranean Sea and beyond. So to how to better use for the coastal areas and how to better involve all the Copernicus entrusted entities, in particular the European Environmental Agency and Mercator Ocean that are leading the coastal areas implementation, but also other entrusted entities like JRC and ECMWF. So in this roadmap, it was built a white paper that highlights some important issues. The first one, the importance of the Earth observation for a knowledge-based approach for data, information, knowledge, and especially to translate that into real action. So to put this in EU political agendas for relevant for coastal areas. So the main issues is to get accessible and interoperable and routine data to facilitate monitoring of coastal areas. This was the main discussion at the beginning. And the initiative has a main goal to support the roadmap for the evolution of the Copernicus core services product. And as you all know, the coastal areas is served by different entrusted entities, specifically Mercator Ocean, but in the EEA, but also other entrusted entities. So how to better interact within all the different core services, how the evolution of these products delivered by the core services can have synergies between the different core services and link with the national services. This is one of the major goals that the white paper and the Med7 initiative was focusing on. So present and concerted within the white paper, some action-oriented approach to develop further relation between Copernicus and member state. This is really important. So the main messages in white paper that you can find is the sharing of coastal data information for use and reuse to give added value to existing products. So the main issue is that measure once and use many times. So it can be exploited and implemented at national and regional level between different governments on all European level. Have an easy and access to the data. As I was underlying, we have like different core services that are delivering different data and information for the coastal areas. As a second message is the need of the harmonization of local coastal products across member states and neighboring countries. This is another important issue. This is important for the development of commercial initiative in the Mediterranean basin, but also to have an homogeneous picture of the whole basin. one of the major issues in the coastal areas is the fragmentation of the information. So it's really important that the information that is going to be released by the new space has to be harmonized at the different member state level. So as a third message, the identification of what is really needed, of the user need, starting from the institutional market. It's really important to tailor products and information to help member state to use Earth observation product for first institutional task, but also second to develop and uptake a commercial downstream sector products. So it's really important that at European level will be the base for market uptake at national level. So the institutional market has to be qualified as an expression of qualified demand that provide a core set of products that will be used for the market development. This is another issue, and it's important to link on also on what was said before, that the public-private partnership is a good point that has to be developed. So all the operational coastal services has to be based on what in the institutional market are the implementation of the framework directive and the national law that implement the framework directive at national level, and see which are the parameters and then the already available data and information that the core services is delivering. So as a final conclusion, it's really needed, and this is one of the main messages in the white paper, to foster a larger and recognized use of Earth observation for environmental reporting. This is still something that is not already yet there. So we really need to use also the framework directive to bring some clear evidence that the implementation of this law has to be drawn by a clear link to the Earth observation data and to Copernicus at European level. Then we really need to have a clear boundary between segments of products that are free of charge, that are going to be delivered by the core services, and which are the segment that has to be left to the commercial services that will have the planning for private future investment. This is really a key part that at national level with the MED7 initiative we are really discussing and really want to endorse. So in this line, we have discussed with the European Commission to set up on what we have called a Copernicus Coastal Coordination Layer to continue the current coordination of marine and land Copernicus services and to have an appropriate interface with the national level. But in order to have this really strong link with the European Union and with the member state, we have also sort of like made a lot of effort in terms of like MED7 countries. So in the final declaration that is dated on the 10th September of 2020, the MED7 in Ajaccio has finally put in the summary of the meeting that have a lot of items in discussion, a clear conclusion that further development also engaging with our southern partners to use Copernicus services for the monitoring and management of coastal areas. I'm happy to also present that the Council conclusion in Space for People in the European coastal area has also stated that. So in the acknowledge of the conclusion of the Council, there's a clear and final politic identification of coastal dimension and user as a Copernicus priorities. And this is really important because if we want to bring the coastal areas attention and the real new space economy, we really have to make a strong effort in that direction. So this is just complete my presentation, and happy that this discussion is going in that direction because I think member state and the European Commission have to really work closely in that direction. You know, coastal area is a tricky part because you have regional law, local law, national law, and you know we have discussed the integration of coastal zone management for years, and there's not a framework directive. So you know, building up this type of framework, not directive but cooperation, we do think at the member state level that is really important, and I think the discussion has to think in that direction, we can do also other, example in this type of approach, not only coastal area, if we think to agriculture. And I know in Cassini, this is going to be taken into consideration. But it's really important that this is done at member state level with the European Commission.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you very much for the presentation. Indeed, it was the best way to close the presentations, showcasing a particular area where new space can play a role, and especially the needs of the final users. That's why we call it New Space for People and Space for People in European coastal areas. And indeed, thank you also for referring to the Met7 countries white paper, which was the source of inspiration to this priority of the presidency that we try to translate in council conclusions, and that indeed encouraged the cooperation. Actually, Evie also mentioned that in her intervention. So we come to the end of the interventions. Let me thank very much the distinguished panelists for the speeches. We have a few minutes for questions. I already mentioned one of them, why the public demand should be lower in Europe compared to the US. I would suggest possibly to give the floor to Evie, and then maybe Olivier could complement, and Carla, if you agree. Evie, please. You have to unmute.
Correct. I hope you can hear me. I think the question should not be the public demand should be lower. There is an echo. I don't know if it's me or some of the other speakers. Anyway, it is a fact, what I said, that the institutional demand in Europe today for the launching services as compared to the US is lower. It's not a question that it should be, but it is a fact. So the question is what we do with it, how we go about it. So this is for us, it is for the Commission point of view, it is a topic that we need to address in the future alliance for launchers, to which all the actors should discuss and see how we go about it. We may have ideas on this direction, but we really want to have a European approach on this public demand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evie. I don't know, Olivier, if you wanted to complement.
Yes, perhaps quickly, as I've been saying, the main difference between Europe as a space power and all the other space power is that actually in Russia, in the US, in China, space is first and foremost an instrument for defense purposes, foreign policy purposes. I'm a federalist, so I hope that sometime in Europe we will have a common defense policy, but we are not there yet. But that being said, defense is probably not the only way forward. There are many sectoral policies that could make use of space-based services. This is basically the goal of USPA, by the way. And I think that yes, in environment, transport, security, it should be improved. Also through the use of new procurement, such as anchor tenancies, such as innovation partnership, which is a very interesting tool of the financial regulation of pre-commercial procurement, things like this. And again, a lot of efforts in regulation and in establishing standards and norms, which, if you look at the US, for instance, a market for space traffic management would be created also through the recourse of regulation as a tool to create a market. So we should explore this also in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olivier. And I know that this is something that Space Tech is also observing in the study, so probably Carla can also share some views on that.
Yes, totally agree with my colleagues. Indeed, there is opportunity to increase the public demand, institutional public demand for space in Europe. And I think all has been said is potentially going in that direction through different means, but also to potentially increase the awareness of how space data and services can be integrated in the operations of certain activities that different governmental entities do. And and in that sense, eventually that's a further action that needs to be done, which starts from the needs and then see how space with other technologies can actually address those needs.
And I'm sure that Andrea would agree that coastal areas are a particular example where indeed institutional demand can drive the private sector. Andrea, if you want to share your views as well.
Yes, as I was already introducing before, it's one of the best thematic areas where this can be happening. With institutional demands, we have to shift between command and control to more public-private partnership. So institutional user need can really bring a development for industry. And I'm always underlying that we start from the space industry, but we can really enlarge the scope. And then we have the real new space economy. And when we see this new space era, this is the way, enlarging the possibility also for the space industry in some sector that before were not even considering all the space data information. This is the challenge that we are going to face in the next few years, really getting to that, to that market. And I'm still think that is still not yet there, but is a really huge opportunities to do. And the coastal areas represent, like energy and transportation and so on, really a key part where to invest.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I see that there are some questions in the Q&A. Ugo, I don't know if we have time to go through them, at least the one on the Law Alliance. I could maybe give a few words to a few seconds to Avi. Do you still have time?
We have not very much time, but if it's very quick, maybe we can have it.
Since this is an important initiative of the Commission, maybe Avi could just shed a few words, additional words on that. So Avi, please.
Yes, just quickly to say that in the future Launcher Alliance, we want to be inclusive. So meaning having both the public and the private actors. And in the private actors, we want all the sizes, and the big and the smallest and the medium. Exactly, to be inclusive. Then we would also like to have commercial satellite operators. But as I said, the European Alliance is something that is voluntary for companies to subscribe. We will have this open call for those who are interested to participate and contribute, and those who want to become members of the Alliance, they will have to sign a declaration towards this project. So we're open on this, and we'll come back later in autumn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Avi. And with this, we come to the end of this session. Let me thank very much the distinguished panelists for their participation. It was really encompassing the different dimensions of new space and really enriching. Thank you very much. And it was a pleasure to be the moderator. And over to you, Ugo.
Thank you. Thank you all, also to my colleagues in the panel. With this, we end the first part of our New Space Atlantic Summit, and we'll have now a short coffee break. And very soon we'll come back to a keynote about Cassini. We should not miss that one because it's the future of the next programs in the European Union. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Olá, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Boa. Eu, se calhar, a única coisa que ia pedir...
Aponte-me para a Regi.
Para a Regi?
Está ali naquela antenazita lá.
Ok. A coisa que se calhar lhe ia pedir era para pôr estas letras que não se leem, está a ver? Lá à direita, em branco. Não tem leitura ali. É um detalhe. Se pudesse só pôr em branco, agradecia-lhe. Impecável. Obrigado. Quer pôr novamente só para eu... Obrigado. Frontier. Startups and scopes. Business. Como? Obrigado. Obrigado. Ok. Até já, João. És tu que chamas? Mas não vai haver agora um keynote? Está bem. Quando tu chamares, eu sou. E como é que vais gerir as apresentações? Logo me dizes depois quando é que...
Não, as apresentações poucas. Apresentar, um bocadinho de resumo do que foi falado e depois o próximo... Ok. Só receber. Olá a todos. Iremos continuar com o próximo bloco. Iria pedir a todas as pessoas para entrar na sala, se faz favor. Please come in. We're going to continue the next block. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome back to the New Space Atlantic Summit, the fourth edition. Now we are going to pass to the next block, which will be focused on entrepreneurship and support to SMEs and startups. And to start, we will have a keynote speech by Thomas Johnson from DigiDefis. Thomas has a lot of experience in the European Union and European Commission. He also has experience with VC funds and investments. And today, in his keynote speech, he will be presenting the Cassini Space Entrepreneurship Initiative by the Commission, which we believe it's going to be a very relevant initiative in the coming years in order to support new ideas, new innovations in the space sector. So let's confirm that Thomas is online, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Thomas. The floor is yours.
Brilliant. So thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to present Cassini and actions in support of entrepreneurs. I can hear that you are gathered in a hall there for a physical event, which is, that's great news. And I guess that after a year of teleworking from home, the business attire is nowadays jogging pants and a sweater. So I tried to dress up a little bit for this event by the Portuguese presidency. So thanks for inviting the Commission. Now, I'd like to say that this is a very interesting moment for the space industry, since space data is used constantly in our smartphones by industry, by governments. And at this point, it's difficult to live without all these services that rely on space data. And looking around our globe, space missions are now conducted on an industrial scale with unmanned and manned launches every week, and landing rockets vertically so as to reuse them has become commonplace, with the 75th landing last week. And there are several European new space companies also planning to put new constellations in orbit. So all of this contributes to lowering costs and making space infrastructure even more accessible to various customers. So at this important junction, Europe needs to keep up with these fast developments. And we see that the pieces are now falling into place with a new EU space regulation. We have a work program with funding that's about to be adopted any day. There's a new cooperation agreement with ESA and so on. And lots of work has gone into this, and we are happy about the strong support from member states and also from the Portuguese Council presidency. So now for my main topic, how we will bring together support for space entrepreneurship in Europe in a better way. First of all, we have a vision now clearly laid out in the space regulation that is to build a strong European space economy with businesses that can compete both in the Union and on the international markets. And to achieve this, we need a new industry setup where we both build on our established prime contractors and we stimulate new entrants to grow and become viable businesses. So over the past years, we've tried in the Commission together with the various stakeholders to identify all the needs and see how well we have provided support to entrepreneurs in the past few years. So here's a list of the most important needs. So startups need to acquire better business skills since the founders often come from the technical side. It's necessary for them to learn more about how to run a business, how to grow, how to raise capital, and all of these other things that you need to do as a business owner, not least recruiting the right people. And we need to have a more lively matchmaking environment in Europe, where we can connect the startups with both large corporations and investors, and try to do this more cross-border, so it's not just at the national stage that this is happening. So we can clearly help here if we work together between several organizations. Another need is to stimulate more private investment into space companies, both in the startups and in the growth phases of companies, which can sometimes be rather sizable amounts of money needed to build companies that are going to, for example, launch a constellation into space or operate a large infrastructure on Earth. Now, to do this, we need to have more venture capital funds focused on space investment, which we have not really had in Europe before 2019, when the Commission and the European Investment Fund launched a pilot investment scheme to try to attract some funds to set up dedicated space investment funds. And we are going to continue to build on this because it seemed like it was a very successful thing. Now, we also need to stimulate more markets, various markets, to use digital applications using space data, so we can exploit the value of space on a wider scale, or as we say sometimes, taking space outside the space bubble. And there are various ways that we can do this. We will try to address some of those with the Cassini initiative, and we are sure that our partners will contribute significantly to this. And finally, we need to stimulate more entrepreneurs to try building new solutions and bringing them to the market. Now, as you notice, the last point is the one that is often addressed in incubators and so on. But we see this as only one of the components, and not necessarily the one that needs the most resources or the most attention. So the needs I just listed here, this is precisely what we're going to try to address from the Commission side with Cassini. Which is our new initiative to support entrepreneurship in a coherent way over a long time period, 21 to 27, and hopefully would continue after that. And the main feature of Cassini is an investment fund, or a fund of funds, with a target of 1 billion euros announced by Commissioner Breton about a year ago, which will channel capital to VC funds focused on space investments, as I mentioned before. So over the next 7 years or so, we hope to see around 20 to 30 funds to raise new capital earmarked for space investments, with the support from InvestEU and Cassini. And this capital hopefully will be invested in the best deserving startup and growth companies. So allowing European companies to raise more capital for their growth plans, this remains a key priority, has been confirmed many times over the years, especially since European companies are often outpaced by, for example, US startups who tend to raise more money in VC rounds than European companies. But we still have a lot going for us in Europe. It's a great place to do business. It's a great place to both start and run companies. So I'll just outline a few of the other actions under Cassini here, and maybe I can even share one slide with you on the screen here. Let's see. So if I enlarge the screen now, you should be able to see this. This is an overview of Cassini, and we've tried to cover the whole innovation chain the best we can with the resources that are at our disposal. So you can see that in the early stages, we tried to promote the use of space data and to encourage more people to become entrepreneurs by holding Cassini hackathons, which will include mentoring. These will be like large events, the first one taking place now in June, in up to 10 member states at the same time, and they can be pitching to each other. We will also have innovation competitions with Cassini prizes, with clearly defined challenges and a quite sizable monetary reward to the companies that manage to solve the challenge and win the competition. Next thing here, you notice that we have planned for a Cassini Business Accelerator, which is supposed to help companies to reach the growth stages. So we have a lot of good support already for the early stages of starting the company and trying out the product, seeing if there's a product market fit and so on. And to take the companies to the next stage and make sure that they can raise the Series A investment round, as it is often called. We will try out a new concept for a business accelerator. It will hopefully be launched later in 2021 or early in 22. We'll also bet on matchmaking being a key issue for many entrepreneurs. They need better professional networks with large companies, for example, but also with investors. So we can set up a series of events and help the startups to get the right kind of contacts that can lead to industrial partnerships or to serious talks about investment rounds. It's a relatively cost-efficient solution. We think that it will bring a lot of benefits. On top here, you see the Cassini Seed and Growth Funding Facility, which is meant to be a facility under InvestEU, which is the union's coherent financing program for the next years. So obviously, we need to put this in place by agreeing with the European Investment Fund on exactly how to implement this and what the target groups are and so on. So there are a few steps left before we can announce this, but it's looking relatively good, and we think that it will correspond exactly to the need to have a kind of a
Fine.
A procurement initiative for
Thomas, we are losing you a bit. I don't know if you are there still. Thomas, could you answer us, please? If not, let's confirm the technical team if they can contact Thomas. No one lost the presentation. Okay, let's see if Thomas can reconnect. Now we're learning more about Cassini, and I suggest everyone to stay also for the next panel in the meantime, because Thomas is touching upon a lot of topics that our speakers will speak about. Here he's talking about the seed and growth VC fund that Cassini wants to implement, and we'll hear the IAF talking about this. Let's see if Thomas comes back. He's also speaking about hackathons and so on. Then we'll hear IPN speaking about these, and we'll hear other sectors. Let's see now. Do you have any feedback from him? Is Thomas online? Could you please confirm? No? Okay. In such a case, I suggest the following, because I don't know if he's coming back. What I would do then is that I suggest that we pass on to the panel, and if he comes back, he can then explain a bit more about Cassini at the end of the panel. I think it's gonna complement the other speakers. For this, I would then suggest, if the other speakers are already online, please confirm this. I would suggest here, Carlos Cerqueira, please come to stage, and Ricardo Mesquita also, if you're here. And then if Thomas comes back, he also can participate in the panel. So, and we'll hear more about Cassini for sure. Let me please introduce this panel. I'm very excited about this because I think it's very comprehensive and has a lot of people that we really want to hear about. This panel is on space entrepreneurship in the Atlantic, and we are going to be talking about what's necessary to grow space companies, why some grow and some don't, why some sectors are actually maybe downstream is developing more than upstream in some countries, and outside the space sector, what lessons learned they can teach us in order for us to implement our policies. For this panel, I have here this. For this panel, I will be moderating. My name is Joan Alabart. I'm the Industrial Relations and Projects Officer at Portugal Space, responsible for everything that has to do with entrepreneurship and innovation, amongst other areas. And we'll have 6 speakers, and the first one will be Daniel Beck from the European Investment Fund, that will be talking about Cassini and this fund of funds that the European Commission wants to implement for space. We'll also have with us Ricardo Marvão, co-founder of Beta-I. Beta-I is a company that's promoting innovation programs in different sectors, and we'll hear what he has to say about this topic. We also have with us Lindblad from Valley Space, a very known company that's developing a tool to monitor and is requiring monitoring projects in space and outside of space. Then we have Nuno Sebastião with us as well. Nuno Sebastião is a co-founder and CEO of Fidzai. Fidzai is a Portuguese company that works in the fintech sector, and it's a very known company because it's the 4th Portuguese unicorn. And Nuno Sebastião is also an investor of Neurospace, a Portuguese startup that's working in the field of space traffic management. And then also to give a different vision, let's see if this moves forward. Now we have here with us, on stage, Carlos Cerqueira, the Innovation Director at Instituto Pedro Nunes, and also responsible for ESA Space Solutions Portugal. And finally, more into the education part, and it's something that Thomas already mentioned. Let's see, it moves. It's not moving. Yeah, you're right. Back. And the last panelist will be Ricardo Mesquita from Nova School of Business Education, who will be presenting exactly this, the gap that we have seen, especially in professionals working in the space sector, that perhaps they don't have enough business skills, and he will be presenting about the Space for Business program that Nova with other universities are now promoting. Just some words on how will this panel work. I will give each one of the speakers 5 minutes to speak about their topic. And then we'll have 15 to 20 minutes for questions that I have here prepared, but also questions from the audience. So I encourage everyone to ask for these questions. And for the first speaker, I would like to pass the word to Daniel Beck, Senior Investment Manager at the European Investment Fund, to speak more about how does the IIF support venture capital funds and what can we expect in the future. Daniel, are you here? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I hope the same is true for you.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Good. So then I'll kick it off. Thanks a lot for including me. I'm hearing an echo, but I guess that will probably disappear over time. So I'm, as you just introduced, I'm a senior investment manager in EIF's Disruptive Technologies unit. We actually are focusing on VC fund investments, typically in the AI blockchain realm. We're actually having new space in it, obviously, and in general, everything that is related to deep technology funds. So Joanne was so kind as to ask me a couple of questions up front and give me some ideas of what I could share. So one of the questions was how we actually supporting the next wave of space companies. I probably can give some background on that, given that I was part of EIF's pilot of the deployment of the pilot of the new space pilot. So obviously, new space, similar to be it AI, blockchain, or other deep technologies, is a crucial focus of the European Commission, but inherently then also to the EIB group and the EIF. In 2020, specifically for that reason, we had access, as Thomas was saying earlier, to a certain volume of 100 million of commission resources that we specifically invested for or committed to funds for investments in new space companies across Europe. That was a relatively huge success, probably even surprising that there were so many high quality managers that we could find that were actually very much interested or already investing in new space. That obviously gave us quite some momentum to gather a lot of market intelligence on where the market currently is, and obviously to build our strategy as well to deploy potentially a bigger amount in that space. And as Thomas was already saying earlier, this is something that we will be actively looking at for the next multi-annual financial framework, so for the next 7 years, funded by EU Commission resources. And obviously Thomas was also talking about the Cassini program, and as he said, EIF is supposedly playing a substantial role in this, because we will continue to deploy in new space based on the first experience we gathered with the program over the last or over the first pilot of 100 billion. 2 words on this. So we typically, so as a continuation of what we did with the pilot, we will be searching for and then selecting the best managers that are investing in new space, and that actually can include very well vertical funds, so funds that are only considering investments in new space companies, be it now up or downstream. But it can also very well include deep technology funds that have a partial focus on new space companies. Why is that? Because obviously you always need to make the right, or find the right balance between investing in vertical funds where there are probably not that many teams out there, and other funds that probably have the skill set and have even invested in new space, but that are not uniquely focused on that. And then obviously the third part of the strategy that we deployed with the pilot, and probably or might be also part of the process going forward, is co-investments. I think there was an additional question, how smaller countries actually can achieve to have dedicated space funds. And I think that from that perspective also, I would say it's not an absolute must that every country will have its own dedicated space fund. I think what is important is that we are thinking of the space sector as Europeans, that there will be many spillover effects, even if there are dedicated space funds outside of their own country, because the deal flow doesn't have the depth yet to only have geographically focused space funds. Yeah? So every European fund will need to go to Portugal and every other country to find the relevant deal flow. And then obviously, I think another answer to that could be that the deep tech funds general deep tech funds could very well get at least partial funding from the space pocket, yeah? And thereby also look at specifically at space companies in certain geographies. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this explanation. Daniel, actually, it's a question because it's something that Portugal would like to explore in the future, whether it makes sense or not to have a dedicated fund in Portugal to support. And would like to take the floor to finish your keynote on Cassini. Thomas, confirm that you are here. Yes.
Hello, would you like me to say a few more words, or did you invite somebody else?
Please go ahead, Thomas, because this way you can complement also what Daniel is saying. And Thomas, perhaps what I would suggest in order to save bandwidth, in your case, if you could turn off your camera, maybe it will help.
I'm trying another room now to see if the connection is better. Can you hear me now?
We are not being lucky here. Yeah. Okay. Thomas, now Thomas, try, please.
Yeah, can you hear me now? I'm sorry that the connection is so sketchy.
No,
normally we have great connection, but just now it decided to go to space or something.
It's fine, it's fine. So yeah, we can hear you. Maybe turn off the camera while you're speaking. This way it's gonna be saving some bandwidth. And please go ahead.
Yeah, so right now it seems to be working. And thanks a lot for the words from Daniel on the EIF side. I think the EIF has also noticed the same tendencies as we have in the Commission, that, that there will be a potential high growth in industries relating to space and the exploitation of space in the future. And we're looking forward to working with EIF and with private investment funds to make the best out of the fantastic potential that we have in Europe. So I was just going to round off my speech by saying that we wish to work with as many organizations as we can over the next years. And if we join forces, for example, we can create a lot better matchmaking opportunities so that small companies can piggyback on established companies, which is very valuable. And in addition to the concrete actions that I just mentioned, there are other things we're also trying to do. For example, how we can stimulate startups and SMEs to get involved in public procurement by providing a level playing field in the tendering processes. So as an example, Europe procures additional Earth observation data to meet the needs of Copernicus users. And we are looking at ways to build as much as possible as we can on Europe-based and Europe-owned data providers, both large established companies and also new space young companies, and hopefully this this idea of some kind of anchor tenancy contracts can help them to build a viable business, and then we'll try to see if there are other opportunities where procurement can play a role in them building a strong plan for the future. So that's what I wanted to say on our side, and we're very much looking forward to the presentations now by companies and investors to see if they have the same picture, and probably they can also contribute, valuable views on what we need to do in the future. So thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you to you, Thomas, for your physical presence here. I hope that in the future we can meet in physical format. I think that
absolutely,
Cassini,
we hope so, and thank you to the
yes,
Portuguese presidency for this event.
Cassini, it's a very, very relevant initiative, and I would like to pass the word to a very known startup, Valley Space. Luis, I think that you are there already. To know more, what has been your roadmap, I would say, from the creation of Valley Space, how you have been growing, getting investors, what you do. A bit enlighten us of a successful story, right? Luis, the floor is yours, and if you have a presentation, you can share it.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here also. Can you hear me well, everyone?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So I will share my screen because I have a small presentation. Just 1 second. Okay. So I hope you can all see it now. Okay. So there we go. So hi everyone, I'm Luis and I'm one of the co-founders of ValleySpace. And ValleySpace is a smart collaboration platform for engineers. So just to explain a bit what that means, ValleySpace is a browser-based software for hardware engineers. We focus a lot from the start. We have focused a lot on the space industry, but ValleySpace is also used in other industries that build complex hardware. And here you can see a screenshot of the software itself. So basically, we do everything from model-based engineering to requirements engineering, analysis, documentation, but everything in one single source of truth in the browser to make it easier for engineers to collaborate together in big projects. So why did we start this company, right? So me and my co-founders, we are all space engineers from the start. So we used to work at different space companies in Europe. I used to work at OHB Sweden for some time, and then I moved to Portugal and worked at TechEver, building their CubeSat. And what we found when we were working in the industry is actually that engineers spend a lot of their time doing non-engineering work. So they spend a lot of time just searching for data, writing documentation, copy pasting values from one document to the other, doing presentations, being in meetings. So we thought that all of this was quite inefficient, and we wanted to have a better way, a more efficient way for engineers to do their actual work, and to be able to focus on what engineers do best, right? Which is coming up with great products and more innovative hardware that we can use in our daily lives. So what we did is we thought, okay, how can we do this best? So we wanted to go from this document mess that there usually is, like with hundreds of thousands of Excel files with different values and consistencies. And we wanted to move into a way of doing data-driven hardware engineering. And what that means is what you see here in the middle of the picture. We created this place or this database where you can store all the information in one place. And this data inside the database, it connects then to other applications, right? So it connects to all your documents. You get notifications when something is changed. It automatically triggers calculations. So if one engineer changes the mass of the star tracker because you have a new model, it will actually automatically update all your mass budgets, all your calculations, all your tests, etc. And once you have this data, this engineering data, we actually see this just as the first level of actually being able to work with the data. But then on top of that, you can actually build a lot of things. Once you have structured data, you can start having more data connections. You can also do more automations, and you can start getting insights from your data. So this, you see the top of the triangle, it only works once you have your data already structured in a good way. And a bit about our customers. So we work with a lot of customers, mainly from the space industry. So since we are all from the beginning space engineers, we knew how to sell because we knew the problems in the space industry. So we're seeing that a lot of space startups are actually switching to a more data-driven engineering style and more agile methodologies. But you can also see in some of the logos here that we also have other industries and other companies using ValleySpace. So for example, Volta Trucks, they are building electrical vehicles, electrical automated vehicles. Bellwether Coffee, they are doing actually coffee roasters. So it's very, actually, this problem that we found in the space industry can actually be translated into other industries as well. And that's where we're going a bit in the future. So a bit about the company. So we started in Germany, where our mother company is, let's say. And then we also opened up a company here in Portugal, where actually most of our team is now in Portugal. And for the future, we also plan to open up in the US. But I'll talk a bit about our future plans in a bit. And also from a team perspective, we're also very international. We're now 35 people in the company, but I think we have around 15 nationalities already. So it's a very international team. People come from all over the world to Portugal to work with us. So that's really cool. From where our customers come from, it's mainly from Europe still. So we find it has been easier to sell to European companies since we're a European startup as well. But we're also spreading a bit out. So part of our customer base is in the US and also part in Asia. And we also, I didn't put this on the slide, but we also have universities basically from all over the world using Valley Space in their university projects. And I wanted to talk a bit about the challenges as a startup. So obviously the first point is getting investment, which we already talked a bit about. We have gotten actually 3 rounds of investment. Our first investment was from just our friends and family because we didn't manage to convince anyone that our idea was good. So we convinced our friends and family to give us some money to get started. And then we have 2 more investments from European VC funds. So we have basically only gotten private investment to the startup. We haven't worked so much with public grants or public investment yet. But that's definitely a challenge when you're a small company to convince investors to give you some money. Another challenge is actually winning the trust of large enterprise customers. So as a small team, it can be difficult to actually, I mean, they question themselves, why should a small team be trusted? And one of our biggest enterprise customers right now is Airbus, and it took actually quite a long time for us to convince them, but with our expertise, we managed to also convince them that Airbus is in a big need for a digitization of their data. And the third point, I would say a challenge is finding the right talent to hire. Even here in Portugal, we have found great people to our team, but it's still, especially developers are very hard to get, or they have very much choice right now. So you have to have a really good company and good benefits to kind of attract them to the company. And just to finalize a bit, what's next for Valley Space, a bit of future outlook. So we're actually going to get the Series A investment, or we're going to start looking for a Series A investment this summer. So that's going to be a big challenge for us, and also a big step forward towards scaling the team if we get that. And also with that investment, we're planning to open an office in the US, as I already talked about. And we're also expanding our reach to different industries because, as I said, we're mostly focusing on the space industry right now, but we also know that there are similar system engineering problems in other industries. So we are expanding a bit our reach to reach other industries as well. And that's about it for me. Thank you very much for listening. And I don't know if there are questions now or after, but I'm happy to answer anything that you're wondering as well.
Thank you, Luis, for your presentation. It's actually very good to see startup actually growing, now looking for a Series A investment and trying to open an office in the US also. It's a good example, right, to follow. And also maybe in the field more of working in other sectors other than space, but with a lot of knowledge of the space sector. Ricardo Marvão, co-founder of Beta Eye, can present a bit the perspective of which are maybe the best mechanisms to foster innovation. And he has a lot of experience in this field, so Ricardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and first of all, thank you for the invitation to the New Space Atlantic Summit. My name is Ricardo Marvão. I'm one of the co-founders of BTI. BTI is a company that was started about 10 years ago. We are a collaborative innovation organization that organizes programs between big corporations and startups from around the world. And we focus on finding challenges from these big corporations and then finding solutions from these startups and SMEs or even research centers to try to solve those challenges. Now, you might think that this could be seen as like an accelerator or a mentoring program, and I would challenge you to think this more as a business program. So the startups come in because they want to find their next big client, and the corporates participate because they want to find what's the innovation out there and where can they find solutions for challenges that internally they haven't been able to solve. And so we focus on 6 core areas, which are energy, healthcare, sustainability, finance, agro-foods, and blue economy. And just to give you an example, for instance, on energy, for the last 5 years, we've been working on a program called Free Electrons that has 10 energy utilities from around the world. And over the 5 years, we've had over 50 million US dollars that has been spent on deals with the companies that have participated. We've had over 100 pilots, paid pilots, between the startups and the corporations entering into the programs. And then also we've had over 2,000 startups participating from around the world. We have over 70 countries participating. And it's amazing how the startups really understand that they're there to close deals. And it's not about the mentoring, it's also about the collaboration that exists between even the corporations. I mean, even though these corporations participate in the same sector, due to geography, they don't compete. And what's amazing is how they share the information regarding the results that they've had, and how come they understand that if they share the information, they can go a lot faster because they understand a lot better which startups they should invest in, how they should move forward with some of the difficulties that they might find inside some of the pilots. And the results over the years has been faster and faster. We've had pilots appear inside the programs. So the area that we've seen that works quite well, and this is maybe an opportunity for the space industry, is really to challenge the corporations, the big corporations in space, to look at these startups as an opportunity to create new products inside their organizations to the market, and find these opportunities by participating, for instance, in a program like this. So if you think that instead of mentoring or accelerating a startup, you actually bring in the heads of units that have a challenge, a specific challenge, and they will only work with the startup that solves that specific challenge, then you have a good match between the possibility of solving an issue inside a unit, and then having that startup do a paid pilot and then getting a long-term contract with that corporation. And so this value chain kind of program, where you have a specific industry participating with a number of corporations and a number of startups, is actually super useful for the industry. And it's something that we've been doing more and more, and we've seen the industry actually accepting these programs more and more. So I guess that answers your question, Juan.
Ricardo, it's a good advice actually. Perhaps for space big companies to challenge SMEs in a specific topic. It's a good advice to follow, right? It has been working in other sectors, in many different sectors. Why shouldn't it work in space? I think it's a good take also for all of us. And now I would like to pass the word to Nuno Sebastião. Nuno Sebastião, who was a co-founder of Fidzai. Fidzai is a company that actually, if I'm not mistaken, still incubated here, or it's still in Instituto Pedro Nunes here in Coimbra, very close to us. A very successful company, and we would like to hear a bit more about your path, right, within Fidzai, and now why did you decide to invest in the space sector, right? Nuno, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Juan. Hey everyone. Well, it's coming with a lot of echo, but it's fine. Thanks for having me. I see a lot of familiar faces from my past. Let's say Ricardo Marvão. I work with him at the space agency. Also, Carlos Ferreira that I know for many years. And yes, it's true. Fidzai is still headquartered at IPN, and for as long as I'm the CEO, it will still be a Portuguese company. So, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm Nuno Sebastião. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Fidzai. For those of you that are not familiar with the fintech space or with Fidzai, Fidzai is today the world's market leader in finding financial crime with the cloud platform to manage financial risk and crime across payments, across financial services. We do that for well over 800 million consumers throughout the world in the over 190 countries. And to give you some idea, we protect half of Canada's population, half of UK's population, 80% of the world's Fortune 500, and 4 of the 5 largest banks in the US work with us. 25% of the total volume of payments whenever we buy with our credit cards that go through Visa or MasterCard or protected by Fidzai. We've raised nearly $300 million, all from private investors in Europe, mainly in the US, unfortunately, but so is the reality of free markets. We're backed by some of the most well-known investors in the world. I'll mention a few: KKR, world's largest private equity company, but also Citibank is an investor in the company. From Germany, SAP is an investor in the company. And more recently, in fact, just a few weeks ago, the Sovereign Fund of Singapore, where they're making a huge push. And there's a reason why I'm mentioning them, because they're publicly owned. They're making a huge push in the APAC region to become the fintech, the financial services sector in Singapore. And they just invested in a Portuguese company, Fidzai. And that brings me to this topic. I'm also fortunately an investor in many startups, Portuguese, US, in different fields, mainly fintech. That's where I've spent the last 10 years, and I'll spend the next 10 years of my career, but also healthcare and, very dear to my heart, space. Why? Well, actually, the first 10 years of my career, there's a reason why I know, Paul, I spent in the space sector, in particular at the European Space Agency. I was a technical officer there in charge of the ground segment simulation infrastructure. And I learned a lot of stuff there, and a lot of stuff that still today we apply at Fidzai. I believe, like Luis was mentioning, there are areas where we can take the learnings that we develop in the space sector and go apply it elsewhere. But I also believe something else. The space sector is now big, mature enough that it can sustain startups working within that domain, as opposed to take the technology from that domain but go make money elsewhere, which is fine. But I also believe money and let's say private companies can be funded and work and operate within the space sector. We're at the beginning, and as the previous speaker, and I was really happy to hear about the Fund of Funds initiative and whatnot. It's really important because, as in many other sectors, Europe is lagging. But the reality is, when about a year ago, this opportunity to fund a company in the space sector arose, I didn't think twice, and to me it was dear to my heart. It's not about the financial return; it's about the development of a sector. And I think having built one of the world's leaders in in a completely different area, there are learnings that I can bring to this space. So I'll share a little bit my screen if I can. Let's see how this goes. Start broadcast. I'm on an iPad, and just talk to you about this company I've been funding for about a year ago, called Neurospace. So Neurospace, what the premise of the company is: apply machine learning. That's what we've done successfully, or I've done successfully in other sectors. Apply machine learning to problems in the aerospace domain. It's still not the norm, far from it. And one of the first problems where the company is going to be addressing there is a very relevant one that will only become worse over the next years, which is related to space debris. As you know, with the emergency of constellations from Starlink, Kuiper, there will be, and we can all see them in the sky, the trains of satellites, and there will be estimates of over 100,000 of these elements in space. So space debris and space traffic control will become a big issue. Just very recent, just a month ago, when a Crew 2 capsule was going to the ISS, they had to do evasive maneuvers and go into emergency mode because there was a potential risk of collision with debris. So that is happening more and more and more, and it will need to be solved. The way it's solved today is very inefficient. It's done with legacy rules-based.
Nuno, I think that we lost you now. Are you there? Can anyone confirm if Nuno's still in the session? No. It's a pity because actually it was also a very interesting one. It's very exciting to hear about Neurospace. What I suggest then is that we move on to the next speaker, and maybe we can ask a bit more at the end if you have time to Nuno. And for the next speaker, we have Carlos Cerqueira here with us, who will talk about ESA Space Solutions Portugal. Carlos, if you would like to go on stage, please.
Good morning to all. Thank you very much for inviting me here. We'll get the space debris as soon as Nuno join us. But now a little bit about what we do at ESA Space Solutions. And the first thought I would like to share with you is that space technology is really like a superpower. And if we think about the startups, they will really need superpowers, because the most likely event in a startup is that they will fail. And they will need all the tools they can get to get out of the so-called dead valley. The spaceflight technologies, Earth observation, GNSS, all these are tools that can give an extra edge to any startup. But as everyone who is familiar with this field of startups knows, that's not enough. You need really a sound, good business model to thrive into the market. You also need a good team. You also need to have interest to customers. You also need some support in get funding. Well, the hard fact is that you will need a lot of things. And that's what you can get at an ESA BIC. You can get 50K to build your first prototype, which for most of the startups at early stage, it's really all the money they will get at that stage. Of course, the millions will come afterwards, but normally the first money is always the hardest to get. You need technical support, you need support on getting funding, you need interest to customers, and all these things you get when you join an ESA BIC. But you also get an entry into the largest innovation ecosystem in the world, which is the ESA Space Solutions. You can see the dots in the Europe map, but this is really a connection to everywhere around the globe where you can get access to big customers, not only in Europe, but in other geographies. In Portugal, it's as a space solution, Portugal. We are, let's call, a one-stop shop for space, for everyone that wants to get into space. And of course, we do it with a lot of partners. We are Instituto Pedro Nunes, who manage as a space solution Portugal, but of course with the valuable support of ESA, Portugal Space, Anacom, and a lot of more partners that help us to really drive this ecosystem. And you can see by the picture, it's a community that it's growing and growing more. It's a community with a proven track record. We already support 30 startups in the first phase of the program, created more than 100 qualified jobs. The turnover is reaching almost 5 million euros. Capital has been raised. And if you look at the percentage of exports, these are really companies that were born global on the first day. They work in everywhere, not only new space, but all the fields. I mean, where they work where the needs are, where the market pains are. And just let me give you a few cases. Strato Automotive, doing predictive maintenance for large fleets. And GNSS, let me see if I can point to the arrow. Okay. GNSS is crucial for Strato to have this predictive maintenance. Materio is doing infrastructure monitoring, so to look at bridges and to see before something happens if everything is okay, and of course they can only do it with the power of Copernicus. And much more cases, the fact is that investors are looking more and more at this portfolio. Just recently we have Teia, Tesla, and Neptune, 3 startups from our portfolio that were invested in 2021. The portfolio is huge and is becoming bigger and bigger. We have currently 42 startups under our portfolio, and we are aiming to get 90 at the end of the program 4 years from now. The network also increased in terms of the incubators that are available for startups to go there. So as you can see by the map, we cover all Portugal mainland and Azores and Madeira. So there's always an ISABIC near you. We have a lot of cost per year, so the entry door is always open for startups to apply. And I would just like to point that ESA Space Solutions, it's ISABIC, but that are other tools for startups to grow. And I would just like to finish with this slide, if I can. That the ISABIC is the start. ESA has other funding tools for really turning startups into scale-ups and into bigger companies, and in the end, the thing that we want for every local ecosystem to create more growth and more jobs. So just to finish, yes, space technology is really like a superpower, and if you want to have those superpowers, you just need to contact us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you, Carlos. ISABIC is indeed a very fundamental program to support startups in Europe. And Nuno, we will come back to you after the presentation of Ricardo. And now I will like to pass the word to Ricardo also to explain a bit more on the education part and perhaps the gaps that they have identified concerning business. Ricardo, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, João. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. Kind invitation for the conference today. My name is Ricardo Mesquita. I run innovation and business transformation at Nova School of Business and Economics in Lisbon. I'm here to represent the consortium of 3 business schools in Europe together with ESA and to share with you the Space for Business program. So this is really, if there's a key word, is collaboration. This is a common effort done by the University of St. Gallens in Switzerland, by the Rotterdam School of Management belonging to Erasmus University in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and by Nova in Portugal. So there's a long story behind this program. I wouldn't say it was in a galaxy far away, but it was in the last couple of years. There's been a discussion by a group of people that we believe that there's the need for business skills to run a business in space. And we see the space as the new frontier. So the three schools came together, also with the support of some of you present. So Hugo was one of them, Emir from the Air Center, Hugo Costa from Portugal Space. Ricardo Marvão was also on the panel, was a big endorser and supporter. And together with these schools, the conversation started rolling, and we decided to launch the program today because we see a clearly growing opportunity for businesses and entrepreneurs in space. So what we've decided to do is create a program that is divided by 3 modules based in the 3 schools. We'll be launching it in November 2021 already, starting in Switzerland, and then coming to Portugal, and then finishing up in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam, and also with a visit to ESA and the opportunity to spend time there for the participants. We see this as a clear opportunity, and being the first ones to launch quite a unique program at this stage, we believe that we can move forward and explore this new frontier. The idea that we do is we bring business skills into space, so either by developing and accelerating new business models. So if you're an entrepreneur, as Carlo was saying, it could definitely serve some of the portfolio companies that you've seen before. Or as Thomas was presenting, Cassini, I think there's clearly a matchmaking opportunity for both corporations and their professionals, and also entrepreneurs, to do the matchmaking and meet amongst a program such as this. Also, you'll be developing your own peer network. So the structure of the program is pretty much as you see there. We start by talking about the new space economy, future trends. We also address the idea that new business models are needed for this new frontier that is space. Then we move into a launch phase, and this will happen in Carcavelos, Portugal, where we'll do ideation sessions. We'll boost the creativity of the participants, because you can either come with your own project to the program, or you can develop your own within that opportunity, or you can also be within a company and have a challenge internally and bring it together with your own team or on your own into the very same program. We'll also address how you can, the funding opportunities. Some of my colleagues have mentioned that before, and we believe that financing is fundamental to accelerate the growth and of your venture. Also, we finished the program in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam, by exploring the scaling up part. And this will be done also by addressing issues of leadership and governance in such businesses. Also, I would say the cherry on top of the cake will be the ability to be at ESA, and we call it the touchdown, where we'll also be very much in contact with the space ecosystem. You do not need to be in space today as a professional. You need to see it as an opportunity so that you start gaining the skill sets to be able to accelerate your business in space. Also, between the modules, you'll have online sessions. So the first one will happen in November, the second one will happen in late January, and the third one in May. And between those presential modules in each one of these top business schools in Europe, you'll be able to get online content, master classes, and you'll be able to develop your own personal impact projects. These are the dates that we are rolling out. I'll share with you in a moment some of the information. I think there's a connection between all the conversations that we've listened to today, and we believe that if there's a time for learning, is now. And if you're really looking at this next decade as an opportunity to grow in the space realm, this is a great opportunity as well to join some of the space enthusiasts. I'll leave you with a few notes. At the end of the day, we'll be doing a couple of things during June and July. We're doing an early bird, which is a great opportunity to join us as well. We have a lot of information available online, and we're working together with ESA to be able to promote this within Europe. Any questions, anything, I'll leave you my contacts, so just let me know. Okay, Joan, thank you so much.
Thank you to you also for bringing today here this very promising program. And Nuno, I don't know if you're still here, but now I would like to pass the floor to you to finish your presentation. Nuno, we don't have much time, so a couple of minutes maximum.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I don't know if you still want to share your screen.
Yeah, so just very quickly, because I just wanted to, if it's okay. So that's the So, I mean, not going to bother you with all of this. So companies launched, companies got customers in about a year since they started operations. They're working with satellite operators, research, industry as well. And the company has been awarded in a consortium with the GMV to build the, let's say, the defense mechanism for Europe to manage space debris. So, my view is in about a year, the company has been able to go from nothing to being one of the providers for the European Space Agency and working with one of the largest players in Europe. And that, I think, is a contrast to where we were in the past years ago. And the space, my observation coming from the fintech or the financial services domain, is that the space area is now faster, but there's still room to improvement. It's certainly better than when I left it over 10 years ago. And I'll just leave this for thoughts. In the fintech world, where I operate, you can build and launch an entire new bank in Hong Kong in this region in 9 months. From start to be live and available to the public. You can raise, that's what we did at FeedZai, $200 million from first pitch to money in the bank in 4 months. Okay? And if I compare that, with some of the discussions I've had and some of the things I'm seeing in this company I'm investing in, for them to close the first contract, almost a year, 7 months. To raise money, and I was really happy again to hear some of the previous speakers, to try and raise 2.5 million, well over a year. So my message here is, while there has been progress, there's so much more progress that can be made, but that's also part of the challenge, and that's why I'm here to try and help to the best of my ability, because I think it's clearly an area where money can be made, but more importantly, where there's a need for innovation and for the private sector to come in, as it's already happening in other regions such as the US. Okay. So that was it. That's what I had. Thank you.
Actually, this slide summarizes a bit something to learn, right, in the space sector, maybe to speed up processes at a European level. And we don't have much time. I think we have like 4 or 5 minutes left. I have a question. Now we are in Coimbra for Carlos. Carlos, you spoke about ISABIC, but if I'm not mistaken, Instituto Pedro Nunes also runs some other programs related to entrepreneurship, maybe perhaps more at local level or European Union level. And I would like, if it's possible, for you also to explain a bit what have you been doing with Cassini, for instance. I think that you are partnering with other players on a hackathon. Now it's going to happen soon, so if you could explain a bit now about this, please.
Sure, of course. All these things, they have to fit into an innovation ecosystem that puts space, both new space and downstream. For instance, we run for 2 years an accelerator on Cassini called Entrepreneur, where we support more than 150 startups, really early stage startups that raise around 20 million euros in their early stage. So that was a huge achievement for these startups. And the other part is really to find the talent. Everything resumes to that. You need really talented people to get into space. And the Cassini hackathons are really an excellent entry door for people to be aware of the potential of Copernicus and Galileo. And they're going to be an hackathon that is going to happen in 10 locations all over Europe, and Coimbra is going to be one of them. Of course, this is going to be remote, so it's in Coimbra, but it's everywhere. And in the 18th till 20th of June, we'll have around 50 people in each of these 10 locations, so 500 persons, really trying to figure out new things to do with Copernicus and Galileo. And that's really, in the end, what matters when you bring creativity and you bring new solutions into the table.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. And now maybe before we finish, I would like if you could go back to my presentation, because I would like to promote a couple of prizes related to Copernicus and Galileo that we are trying to promote in Portugal. I don't know if you can share it, please. But to sum up, as you might be all aware, every year there are 2 competitions that are organized at the European level, Copernicus and Galileo Masters. And these competitions, target basically to award the best ideas of the year using Copernicus data or Galileo for different sectors. And these competitions have a European dimension, but they also have some regional awards that different regions or different countries try to promote, right? And until now, Portugal has never had Portuguese prizes, even though Portuguese companies also participated. And this year we believed it was very important also for Portugal to step ahead and try to have some Portuguese prizes. And we are very proud to announce that for this year we even have a challenge for the Atlantic, a Portugal Space Atlantic Challenge. We are looking for innovative ideas on ocean and coastal applications that use Copernicus, but not only. We also try to promote using other space-based data, such as EGNSS or perhaps SATCOMs. But we also have this year a couple of regional prizes. We have the Copernicus Regional Prize Sores, and we have the Galileo Regional Prize Portugal. Please, one more. The deadline to submit your applications is the 19th of July, so there's still 1 month to go. And we really want to encourage everyone that's working in this domain to submit their ideas. I think that the prizes are very challenging, but are also appealing. And if you could go to the next one. Next one. And they are appealing because for our challenge, the Portugal Space Atlantic Challenge, we are offering a €10,000 cash prize to the winner, and then other in-kind prizes, such as participation in next edition New Space Atlantic Summit to be able to pitch, and we believe it's important. But also, next one, please. For the regional prizes, for instance, NOVA will be offering a scholarship for the Space for Business program that will cover half the total price, and this is very relevant. We will also offer a ticket to the Web Summit, where especially if you are working perhaps with Galileo, it's a very good place also to do networking. And of course, our partners, the Air Center, Instituto Pedro Nunes, and NOVA, will be also offering training in different fields, technical and business training to the winners. So please, if you have some doubts, contact us, in my case, me or my colleagues, and we encourage everyone to participate. And with this, I would like to close the panel. I would like to thank all the speakers. I think it has been very interesting to see very different perspective on entrepreneurship in Europe, from the venture capital funds to startups that work in space or outside space and then are investing in space, to understanding more about incubation centers and also about business education. And we'll really look forward to see what Cassini Initiatives brings in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and see you next year here.